I'm Derrick Porter, and today you're listening to Behind the Scenes with Music in the Spoken Word. We are fortunate to have Joseph Nielsson, Curator of Organs at Temple Square, on the show with us. Joe, welcome. We're so glad to have you today. Thanks for making time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, this is a fun and unique experience to have you here. I've watched your work from afar, literally, as I've seen you climbing through what many would call perhaps the most exciting jungle gym along the Wasatch Front here in Salt Lake City, Utah.
It is unique. Yeah. The only thing I don't have is a fireman's pole to go down.
Well, you could probably add one of those. 4 stories or so.
4 stories,
right?
yeah. It would be a thrill.
That would be a ride. And as you said, you used the word unique. This is a unique role. I might call it 1 in a billion or 1 in a trillion. Curator of Organs at Temple Square. That's really something. Tell us about this role, how long it's been around, and what it does exactly.
Well, it's I don't know in the early 1900s what particularly. I mean, we see pictures of technicians or tuners. So the role has been around. Now it is morphed in many ways. It's gone from, maybe a caretaker or somebody that's does other work around the state, and then comes in and tunes the instrument. So, but as far as a full-time position, I think in the 50s and 60s is when that really began to solidify. So my predecessor, Robert Paul, he started in roughly around 1984 when they did kind of the second iteration of the instrument since the 1949. So that's when he began, and he was there for 41 years maintaining the instrument, and every time it would break, he would, go in and fix it. And
wow.
Yeah.
And how long have you held this role?
So I've been here for 2.5 years. We overlapped a little bit, but yeah, 2.5 years at this position.
So tell us what, at a high level, if you have 30 seconds going up an elevator, what is it that you do exactly as the Curator of Organs at Temple Square?
Well, I see it as a stewardship in that I have to make sure that it's playing well, that it agrees with the organist when they play, meaning that it has to be tuned. It's very important to the overall ensemble of music in the spoken word and the choir. If the organ is out of tune, or if there's issues with the tuning, it can be somewhat of a drudgery and bring things down. So the organ has to be sprightly, it has to be energetic, it has to be ready to play at all times.
So how did this come about? How did you get here? Tell us the story and the journey.
So the journey is interesting. When I grew up, I had no desire to. I didn't have this feeling like someday I would be working at the Tabernacle. There's a lot of people that would say, "Hey, you're going to play at the Tabernacle," and I'm like,
"So you're an organist?"
So I'm an organist, but I didn't actually start the organ until I was 21. So post-mission, I really wanted to. I actually wanted to be in composition with an emphasis on piano, and in a series of events I can only call as very God moments. All of a sudden, I changed my focus to organ, and Parley Belknap, who was the professor then, he took me into his circle, and he was really one of the kindest, most gentle, but also pedagogically, I think I said that right. Just he knew how to bring music out, and so in that process, I then became an organist and learned the skill. Graduated from BYU, then got my master's degree in performance at University of Kansas, and then I had started my my doctorate degree, and we decided that was not the path I needed to go. There was an organ firm that was close. It was in Missouri, and I began the process of doing an apprenticeship, kind of the old world style, where you go from one place to another, and and experience all those things. So with a master's degree and with an intimate knowledge of that, before I had done any of this, I had grown up with my father being a carpenter, and he also played the piano, which is interesting. His hands are big, and to see him play the piano was an experience. And I always wanted to play like my dad, but so I had those two things. I had construction and I had music, and what's great about being an organ builder is I've been able to take both of those elements and fuse them together in what I call it is an experience of a lifetime. So,
well, that it is. So, tell us what your days and nights look like, because a lot of times I get here early and you're there. I leave late and you're there.
Right.
I get this impression that you almost live here at Temple Square at times, and it's seasons.
Well, yeah, sometimes I wonder if somebody just pushes the food under the door, I'd be okay. No, it really depends on the event. Conference is a high pressure type of situation. Everybody sees the finished product. It comes on the screen, and it seems like there's flawless movement. I can tell you that there's a lot of work done by many people behind the scenes to make that look like it's effortless. The organists have a hard time because they need to. Nobody would expect a dancer or maybe an ice skater to go into a venue that they haven't skated on, and so it's the same with the conference center organ. That when you're playing pieces, especially if you're doing two people, where you have this choreograph, you have to work through that choreography all the time. And so between the organists, actually between the floral, between general authorities who come in who want to, sometimes they're new at it, so they want to get a sense of the space and how their voice feels in that, and the lag, and then reading the teleprompter and things like that. It is a dance to be able to get the organ, which is a huge part of conference, to be able to support the choir but also play well. One of the other things we don't realize is that even though the conference center is this large space, it's also heated by the people that come in, and so you have these movements within
temperature
the organ.
affects.
And the
organ.
Temperature does affect the organ.
The sound or the tuning, or how does it?
It's mostly tuning,
okay.
Especially with there's two types of pipes within the organ. One is a reed, which is actually akin to a clarinet or oboe. So there's an actual reed that's going back and forth. And then the other is what we call a flue. It doesn't have any reed. It's just, it has a languid, and air passes that languid and hits the upper lip, and that's what it creates it. And so the non-reed pipes have a tendency to detune as it gets hotter, whereas the reeds stay constant. So you have this kind of pulling internally within the instrument. So,
and we referenced this word jungle gym earlier, but you were kind enough to take me one time with earplugs on and maybe a hard hat, I don't remember, but we were climbing up and down and all over and around, looking at and seeing these things. And I remember thermometers placed all throughout,
right,
so that you could watch and see the elevated temperature tones, and then knowing that you needed to go in and make fine-tuned adjustments.
Right. The secret to a good tuning is to know when to tune and when not to tune. I've met people who have, or organists who have demanded a certain thing be in tune, and then the builder or maintenance person will tune it to their parameters, and then the next day the instrument is completely unregulated and out of kilt. So it's important to know when to tune and when not to tune, what to hit and what not to hit. If something's out, maybe it's not what you think. So you have to also know as you are tempering the pipes. I listen to the fourths and fifths, making sure those all works. Listen to octaves and intervals like that, so I know that I'm hitting and getting the right note. Because sometimes you'll think that it's this pipe and it sounds like it's that pipe, but it's actually the pipe that's an octave away, and so you have to be very careful in where you go, and so you have to make really fast decisions, but you can't make rash decisions.
So give us an idea here, in the conference center, let's say, how many pipes total?
Oh,
roughly.
roughly, about 7,600.
Okay.
In that area.
Tabernacle.
That one I do know, 11,623.
Very good.
Yeah.
Height from top to bottom of the largest pipe in the conference center.
So the largest pipe in the conference center is roughly about 42 feet in speaking length, which it goes down in past the 32-foot series into what we call the 64-foot series. So you're going into, it goes down to about 12 hertz and below the human hearing range. What you're actually hearing,
you can feel it.
You can feel it. You can also hear it, but it's because the overtones are playing,
Okay.
and you hear most of the overtones, but you never, you're getting to the point where the ear and everything can't process that much sound.
And then the smallest pipe in the conference center.
The smallest pipe is roughly about 5/16 to 3/8 of an inch. It's very small, and kind of about the height of your pinky fingernail. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
And those pipes in the conference center are constructed out of what material?
So there's a couple things, couple types of construction. There's the wood, and you don't see that, but flute pipes primarily are constructed out of woods, poplar or pine, sometimes oak, sometimes cherry. And there's not a lot of wood pipes in the conference center. There are some. The pipes that you see visually, they're made out of very heavy zinc, and they weigh a lot.
I could only imagine.
So, and they're very well built. And then most of the pipe within it is it's an alloy of lead and zinc. Not lead and zinc, lead and tin. Sorry about that. So, and which is really interesting because one of the things that's really fascinating, I think, about pipe organ building, and especially when it comes to lead and tin, is that, lead and tin, when you melt them, they're at a higher temperature to melt that than if you put them together. It's called the eutectic point. And that's what making soldering those pipes is so much easier, is that when you put those together, then it actually lowers the temperature of soldering those pipes.
Wow.
And so that is the bulk of most of the pipes.
Wow.
And it's usually from about 4 foot. The 4 foot speaking height is where we call it spotted metal, because as you put those elements together, as they cool, the tension within their the atomic structure, is going like that, and so it creates what we call the spotted metal.
So over on the tabernacle side now,
Yeah.
the tallest pipes are about?
The tallest pipes from speaking room are 32 feet.
Okay. And the smallest, is it similar to what's
It's
in the...
similar
Okay.
there. The conference center will have a larger scale, because it's meaning that the diameter of the pipe is much greater than the tabernacle.
Okay. It's a bigger space.
It's a
trying
bigger
to fill.
space, and it's not much, but it's enough that it does make a difference.
Yeah.
So.
And the main construction of the tall pipes that we see in the tabernacle are made out of what?
They're made out of pine.
And are they original?
They are the tallest pipes. Yeah, there's the 10 tallest pipes that you see in there are original. They would be the original pioneer pipes.
Hand carved.
Hand carved, made like barrels. So
Wow.
the process is that you cut them into wedge type. If you actually look at the pipes in the right light, you can see the lines coming down, the vertical lines coming down, and they would take raw hide and wet that, and as it dried, it would like a clamp, it would pull it together. So
Incredible. Now, as I understand it, the way these pipes are working is there's air pressure being forced and pushed up and through, carrying the sound, and you have these various mechanisms that open and close,
Right.
allowing for sound to go through.
Right.
And in
Yeah.
those today, we have these massive compressors that are pushing air through. But in the earliest of days, tell us how that worked and how they got sound from the organ, this mechanical instrument of sorts, pushing it all the way through these 11,000 some odd pipes up and out and through.
Well, actually, the blowers that are down in the basement are original to the instrument. So the original 1949 instrument. In the late, let's say 1880s, 1890s, that's when electricity became, and they would have. That's when we started to see these great big turbine type things coming. So from 1900 on, we know for a surety that it would have been a blower in the basement. Before that, though, let's go back to Joseph Daines, where he had the instrument. It was a very small instrument. It was a mechanical action, and meaning that all the components were. There was no sort of pneumatic assist or anything. Everything was a lever that was pulled down mechanically. And behind the organ, there would be some bellows that you would take and lift up, and then gravity would bring it down, and then you go to the next one and open it up. There would be a lever at the bottom, or a valve at the bottom that would let the fresh air in. And then when the pressure came down, it would close it, and they would just do this process. So, yeah, it was hand pumped in a sense, but it wasn't like in the blacksmith shop. You know, They were.
Wow. And then was it eventually replaced by water and turning on a wheel and helping push this through? Tell us about that.
That is one of the great myths of Temple Square.
Okay.
So no, that is it was actually in a book. I don't know which book it is, but there's a lot of people have thought that there was some sort of water wheel that. But there's if anything, it would have been that there would have been water that was turned by a wheel that created electricity, then that created that would then go to the turbine. So.
Well, it's really fascinating, and I've watched you just lastly as we're talking about the tuning of this instrument. I've watched you with your cell phone.
Oh yeah,
sitting in the conference center, playing the organ from your cell phone.
Right.
I mean, that's incredible. And tell us how that works, and if you're ever tempted at home to start playing on the organ while you're at home.
Well, luckily, none of that, because it's a closed system. You know, I can only do that within.
No one's going to hack in during general
nobody's
conference
going
and
to
start playing.
You know, but that is a fascinating thought. At the last Christmas concert, I was actually behind the scenes with an open iPad connected to the organ, and I could play the organ, and I had to play 2 notes, that was my debut. You know, it was awesome. But the problem is that I can, if the organists are playing and it is on in my pocket and it comes up. Yeah, it could be not a good thing. Yeah. So for the most part, I will get into the Wi-Fi, and then I'll be able to tune the instrument. So I can tune it within the instrument itself. Yeah. So I can check balances and all that. I don't need to talk to anybody at the console.
Well, it's certainly an incredible machine. I've seen air conditioning up there. There's a video camera.
Right. There's
a TV so that you know the organist can see the conductor. I even understand they can turn some lights off and on around the pipes and some things like this. I mean, this is a complicated piece of
there's some complement. Yeah, the console is very complicated. It's also somewhat simplistic. So there's once you kind of get the feel of it, you understand the parameters. It becomes less complicated. But visually, as a person who just goes up and sees the instrument, it's very complex.
So, what does it mean to you to serve the Tabernacle Choir in this way? Earlier on, you said, "I feel like I'm a steward."
Right.
What does that mean to you?
Well, this gets into kind of the more spiritual side, I think, of music. Music being to me, music is a language, and a universal language, and so I feel with the choir's mission to be able to bring music and the message of the gospel and the message of our Savior. I feel that there's it's important for the organ to be in tune, for the organ to be in a good space. Meaning that everything, I kind of think of a surfer. Now I'm not a surfer at all, but I the idea of staying on that wave and being able to ride that wave as opposed to being, under the wave. And what I want to be able to do is have that relaxed kind of feeling. The organ is something that's, organ builders talk about this often, that organs have personality, and they'll let you know if something's wrong. And so you want to kind of, like a cat, you want to make sure you pet it and feed it and do whatever it needs to. So in the end, it does what it needs to do. So,
are there moments, maybe late at night or in quiet hours, where you feel something sacred in that space that you're working in?
Oh, absolutely. There's times where I've always found music and sound and tone and overtones to be a place where I feel the infinite, and so sometimes when the sound is going through me, I feel like it resonates. It's kind of hard to describe, but because the organ is so large and because it produces so much tonal energy. Maybe it's akin to somebody going up to to a rock concert or anything like that, where there's loud sounds and you feel that pulse, that energy going through you. The organ has that energy, and so being a part of that and kind of riding the waves in a sense there is a spiritual element to that.
So you're not the one on camera, you're not the one playing the keys, but of course your influence is felt in and through and by every note that comes about, because you are the one enabling that to occur. How does the Savior Jesus Christ fit in to the organ, or are there parallels with the gospel of Jesus Christ that come from this instrument?
I think so. A couple of things. One, I think, we have the temple being restored, renovated, and part of the reason for that is that the names of the past, the people of the past, their names can be heard again. I think the organ, in a sense, has that same capability where the music of the past can be heard again. And, that sacred music, especially, Bach wrote things to the glory of God, so Deo Gloria. And a lot of the, Handel, the Messiah, that was written with the intent, for the sacred. And I see that as super important, that their music, the music of the ages, the music of composers both new and dead, can be heard in that space. And that's what makes the Tabernacle organ so amazing. It's an instrument that we has been defined as the American classic instrument, and that the intention was to be able to play all the world's music from the Renaissance or even earlier up until this current time. So I think the organ has a place in letting the voices of the past be heard. And I think that has something also I see a connection, maybe in my own way, to how we're looking to the past and to those our predecessors, and creating that bond. Also, I think, with the types of pipes that are in the instrument, we have ranks of pipes. Ranks of pipes are pipes that look similar, that go up and down the keyboard, and they're peculiar sound. And I see that in the countries and peoples of the world, that each one of us is different. Each one of us has peculiarities to our region, all sorts of things. And yet I see that Christ, who is assembling us all, is able to take and tune us. And I use that loosely, but he is trying to tune us so that we can feel the resonance of God and the Spirit. But my personal opinion is that the Spirit works in waves, in light, and that once we attune ourselves and let go some of some of those non-partials, the partials that don't quite fit into the natural overtones, that we feel that Spirit. And I see that in the organ when you tune things and make them so that they are working as they should on those waves, that the organ becomes more intense. When we initially build an instrument, we put the pipes in and we'll do the first tuning. The organ kind of sounds meh, but once it comes together, once it's mostly tuned, and all of a sudden the overtones start to work with each other, and what was kind of not intensity wise, but it didn't come together. But once it's all kind of put together, all of a sudden, what was less becomes more, and so there's this coming together that all of a sudden the instrument does this. And I see there's a lot of parallels in how we work together. If we're attuning, if we're trying to work with each other, if we're trying to resonate with each other, that it's a compound. And so the idea that we do our best and then God will do the rest. I like that idea, in that, when we attune ourselves, let Christ be the master tuner, and get rid of those natural tendencies to be dissonant. Not that dissonance in itself is not important in our journey, but it's coming together, and all of a sudden, what wasn't becomes. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It does, and it's a beautiful analogy, as you've mentioned, for all the peoples of the earth, each of whom contribute so incredibly to something far bigger than ourselves.
Right, yeah.
So as you think of your journey these last 2.5 years here on Temple Square, what are you most proud of in your work?
Well, I think what I'm most proud of is what we're doing now at the Tabernacle.
Tell us about that.
So, the Tabernacle organ is an Aeolian-Skinner from 1949. So post World War II, after the metal embargo was lifted, Aeolian-Skinner, which was in Boston, they were asked to build this instrument. And before it was Austin, a company in Connecticut, and Austin was because of the way that it was built. It's how we got the wings on the instrument. Before it was just a singular kind of center towers, and then the 15 feet in 1915. That's easy to remember. 15 feet on both sides, and in that space, then they were asked to create an instrument that was basically to be world renowned. I mean, they didn't know it at the time, but I think their foresight was to create an instrument that would be known throughout the world. And but what's interesting about pipe organs, and also pipe organ history and history in general, is the 70s happened. We all know what happened to lapels and ties. Ties got wider. Well, the same thing happens kind of in sound, and even temperaments, and also tuning. Pitches. A440 is a standard now. It used to be different way back in 1920. So all these are kind of fashions that come here and there, and so the organ can find itself being, tugged in certain directions. In 1984, they decided to do some work on it. Now, this wasn't a restoration. This was kind of, they looked at what was there, and they figured there was a few holes, and so they tried to plug those holes with some other sounds that would kind of bring the music and the instrument to conclusion. When I got here, I realized that the instrument in general needed to be restored completely. So, for the most part, we've taken everything out of the instrument, and we'll continue next year also with the project. It's an ongoing project, but the idea is to not only restore the instrument to its original, but to cause somewhat of a finality to the instrument. Really look into it research-wise to make sure that we are true to what G. Donald Harrison, who was the president of the company, an Englishman that had come over, and also Alexander Schreiner and the organists that were then, to be able to really get into their minds and see what the intention was. And and then make sure that this instrument will last through the millennia. That's ultimately my goal is to make an instrument that, not make an instrument, but curate this instrument to the point where it is acceptable to the church, to the world, and to God ultimately.
Wow.
So,
well, if someone is listening today who may feel unseen in their own quiet service, what advice would you have for them?
it's an interesting question. I've thought about that, and so I'll kind of bring the pipes of the organ in, kind of give you an idea. So the organs traditionally are thought of as kind of loud, bombastic instruments. You'll hear the D minor of Bach, or you'll hear, people always want to hear Phantom. They think that the two pieces that were written for the music, for the organ are those. And the fact is, it's such a wide range of literature. I find that the organ it's a very intimate instrument. And the softest stops, the ones that don't get heard often, are actually the most intimate, and sometimes I think the most important, because it, in the times when, there's a lot of bombacity, I guess. I don't know if that's a word, but there's a lot of voices out there that are yelling, and the organ has that same thing. It has sounds that are louder than others, and we have the millennial trumpet at the conference center, which is, it's very loud. But there's a stop called the flauto dolce, and it's a sweet flute. It's a soft flute. It's penetrating, but it's very, very smooth, very calming, and that sound is just a glorious sound. And so I would say to those who are maybe not, who are in the background, who are soft, that don't say a lot of things, that I think that the beauty of the organ is based on how soft and how intimate it can be. And so your work is not, it may not be bombastic, it may not be in the forefront, it may not be visually seen, but it is important. And sometimes your quiet reservedness is actually how we can feel the Spirit the most. So sometimes in that moment when we need silence, that calmness is more important than the loud, than those who are visually seen. Does that make sense? Or visually heard?
So, Joe, tell us about a time when you may have felt that God was using you as an instrument in His hands.
So that's an interesting and wonderful question. So I specialize particularly in giving the pipes their voice, and we, in pipe organ terminology, we call that a voicer. And we take these pipes that on the initial blow they have crazy harmonics. They sound, it's not a great sound. It's unpleasant, but there's ratios within the pipes, the diameter, the mouth width, all those things that help the pipe to speak ultimately as it needs to be. And I've had moments in my life where, it's hard to describe, but I'll know exactly what I need to do to make that sound come out. And, much akin to the conductor saying, hey, soprano something over here, or alto somebody over here, I can hear you, your vowels are incorrect, or there's some strident. Well, it's the same with the pipe organ and with pipes themselves, is that you want to make sure that those pipes are doing what they need to do. And so knowing, it's almost instinct wise, but there are moments as I have learned this craft where I feel like God is the great voicer, and that I'm learning from Him. And I don't know how to describe it, but He is a creator. And in that creative process, when you're actually taking the raw elements of the earth and just doing all the physical, but also physics oriented. There's a lot of physics involved with that, but also there's just this little bit of art and nuance, and it's a wonderful place to be. And I have felt God in that, felt His presence, felt almost, as Joseph Smith said, pure intelligence come, where I know exactly what to do, and it happens, and it's very unique, and it's hard to describe, and I think very few people have gone to that place because, there's not many pipe organs, and again, not a lot of pipe organ voicers. But in that moment, it's really fun to go to that place where you're at the edge of creation and you're creating at that same point.
Well, I could only imagine, again, having been in those chambers where all these pipes are housed, and considering the two across the street from each other, the Tabernacle and the Conference Center, being responsible for nearly 20,000 pipes from 5/16 of an inch to 42 feet tall, speaking length.
Right.
And all the stops that go with it, all the electronics, everything that goes to make that happen, to produce that sound each week, is actually nothing short of miraculous.
Well, the other thing that's interesting too is up until the 1900s, the organ was considered the most complex of all humankind's inventions. It was the crowning. They call it the king of instruments, and for great reason. But because it has a body, it has wind, it has mouths. It represents in some ways the human body. It was man's attempt to recreate, at least musically, the human body. So the pipes have names like mouth. I mean, it has mouths, ears, it has beards, it has a body, it has toes, it has, all those kind of things, which is fascinating. So
and you are the brain of the body in a way.
Well, in
you're
a sense,
part of the central nervous system. Let's say that.
Right, and in somewhat in that process, you have to know a lot about physics. You have to know a lot about sound, obviously, and how those all work. If there's a lot of troubleshooting, knowing you've got to know electricity and how it works and functions and all that, those kind of things. It's important, especially with those kind of big instruments, to be able to not go in the wrong direction and try to there's and believe you me, I've you ask about how this process came to be. There's moments when I've done some really dumb things, and so that experience of has helped me do what I do now and be able to do it efficiently and effectively. But I've had some experiences where I was like, oh, I won't do that again, because I had gone the wrong path, and it took time that I didn't have.
Thank you so much, Joe, for being here today, for being my friend, for the incredible work that you do on these organs here on Temple Square, and for being behind the scenes and teaching us all that we can take pride, if you will, in being that special organ stop, the one that may not feel that it's heard that often, but that is a great contributor to the Spirit. We're grateful for your work. We're grateful for your impact. Thank you again for being here with us today.
You're welcome.